Good morning, everyone. Hello and welcome to another edition of Tracksuit Thursday, sponsored by PFC, Peace, Freedom, Connection, included with life. Thank you for being here. Have a really fun conversation today. The topic is truth, specifically the truth about truth. What a fun conversation. We did a couple things leading up to this live stream, some content we put out, also some surveys we ran. One of the surveys asked the question, what do you think about the truth, right? It wasn't really how it was worded, but something like that. Is it personal, meaning like it's specific to me? Is it universal, like the truth has to be true for everyone, or something that's true and maybe some don't believe it? Is it both, sometimes one, sometimes the other, or does it depend on other factors? Most of the respondents, the majority of respondents actually, answered the truth is universal. The second, and it was about 40-something%, the second most popular answer, 30-something%, was it's personal. I think that says it all. Even with the question, what is truth? We have different opinions, don't we? The dictionary defines truth as that which is existing in accordance with facts and reality, right? So the truth is a function of the facts. What are the facts equals the truth. What is reality equals the truth. And yet, what are facts? What are unassailable facts? My new favorite word, right? Cannot be attacked, cannot be dismantled. What are unassailable facts? Well, it's amazing when you go looking and say, well, what facts exist that we can't dispute? Well, I could probably do an entire segment just on unassailable facts, or at least facts that were unassailable at one time, that later on with additional evidence, additional information, or even new technology, well, they weren't the facts. Germ theory, right? People never had this idea that there were things called germs. Sometimes I think we even tortured or put people to death who suggested there were little microorganisms. Well, then along comes the microscope and we could see them, right? The new technology, oh, new facts, right? Quantum theory, right? Particle, wave, both, right? These were theories. We didn't have facts for them. And then one day we had the technology for proving it. I wonder what else, right? Radio waves didn't used to be a fact until we had the technology available to notice them, see them. So too with our consciousness, this idea of how we exist in consciousness, what level of consciousness we have access to. For some people, the idea that there is a consciousness frequency, that ain't true. For some people, it is true. And if something has taught us more than anything in the last couple of years, this notion of facts are relative, it has to be the political environment, the world global political environment, the pandemic, and the existence of following the science. Well, it turns out the science, well, different people got different views of the science, and certain people were able to talk about their science, and then sometime later they could talk about their science, right? But in the moment, it's the truth. But later, more information comes to light. Well, that's not the truth anymore. So this isn't going to be a conversation about politics. This isn't going to be a conversation about the hypocrisy of peer-reviewed science, and it is hypocrisy, right? If you look at how science is performed, all science is funded by people who have a vested interest in producing the results consistent with their worldview. That's not like a bad thing. That's just how it works. Nobody's going to pay for a study that proves them wrong. They're going to say, yeah, I'm not giving you any more money, right? So this is going to be about the truth and perhaps a search for what truth is, but I don't think we have all the time in the world for that. We got a half an hour. What we're going to talk about in this idea of the truth about the truth is, what is it for? What is its utility? Right? We're not really going to actually even argue about what it is, except in an interesting exploration of how do we use it? Because what I'm going to suggest to you is in 2023, with what we know about the world, how the world works and how fast it's moving, how we've used the truth for centuries might not be the best application of it. It's like a tool that's been used for one thing. We may not need it for the same thing anymore. Maybe there's something else we can do with it. Because I do believe that the idea of the truth is important. But when half the people surveyed think that the truth is absolute and the other half think that the truth is personal, well, we have a problem even talking about the truth. So a couple little things I want to sprinkle in there that over the years have informed, my thinking about the truth. There was a book that came out in 1841, Charles Mackay, Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. Incredible book, literally written in 1841, talks about several phenomenon in the world where literally you had groups of people essentially hallucinating phenomenon, declaring this is what's going on and making decisions, taking actions based on what they viewed as the truth that turned out to be horrifically wrong. The Dutch tulip bulb crisis, where people were buying futures in tulip bulbs, is one of the stories there. It's an incredible book. It's a fascinating read. Put it in your bathroom, read a couple pages every day. It'll crack you up. But it shows throughout history how we've had an incredibly, well, let's just say, creative relationship with this thing we call the facts and truth. Charles S. Pierce in 1877 wrote a paper called The Fixation of Belief. I read this paper 30 something years ago, blew my mind. It talked about how the mind is constructed to attach to these things we call beliefs or truths. And contrary to a lot of the other philosophers at the time, Charles Pierce was arguing against the idea of a search for truth. What he fundamentally questioned was the idea that the human mind is even equipped to look for something called the truth. In fact, what he stated is the human mind requires beliefs, and whatever belief it has for a particular question, that is the truth, and it will cling to that truth tenaciously and filter out all sorts of other information that disagrees with that truth, that belief. Fascinating paper. Most recently, Tim Urban, one of my favorite bloggers, if you will, he has a site called Wait But Why. And if you've never come across Tim Urban, I strongly recommend you check out his work. He's literally a genius. He writes these really cool articles with these fun little pictures. He finally published a book, and it's called What's Our Problem? And it's an expose, peeling back the covers, if you will, on the current state of the US and probably the world from this idea, how do we create thinking and truth and beliefs, and how do those integrate? How do they form? How do they play out in the political world and otherwise? And it's a whole lot of fun, because what Tim is suggesting is we've gotten to a point where the dichotomy between what one side believes is true and the other side believes is true, and how they support that belief, is really starting to cause some problems. And he offers a way out. So check it out. Another phenomenal book that has informed some of my ideas about the truth was written by an Indian sage, an enlightened one by the name of Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. And if you're interested, we can put that in the chat, or let me know. We'll get you the link to that. And really, it was a collection of his talks, right? This was a guru. People would come and sit at the foot of the guru and ask questions, and he answers the questions supposedly as someone who's speaking directly for God, consciousness, the universe, etc. One of the quotes I cherish, and I'll probably get it a little wrong, but it'll be directionally correct, is "I am is truth. When I speak, I am. That is the only truth." That's his opinion. That's his truth. I am is only truth. Anything that comes after that is made up, right? Think about it. I am Townsend. Well, I'm making up Townsend. I'm a coach. I'm making up all sorts of things. I'm creating it. But what is true, what is unassailably true is I am. I exist, or I couldn't even be declaring it. So some fun things, you might pull on those threads and see what rabbit holes that lead you down. Listen, this is pretty simple, right? In 2023, it doesn't take long to see the problem, right? Go on social media. Go read about what's going on social media, where various groups are trying to say, well, these people shouldn't be able to say these things. These people shouldn't be allowed to share those things, right? Everybody's vying for the idea of, well, I know what the truth is. Recently, we just had some videos released. And again, this isn't about politics. This is about two separate movies in the same movie theater. One portion of the population sees images and says, that's proof of this. The other sees the exact same footage and says, no, that ain't proof of this. Our videos are proof of this. They're making that up. And everybody's doing it. So again, this isn't which is true. We could talk about that. This is what utility does the truth have? What utility does the truth hold? Not long ago, I was in a Planet Fitness. One of our travels took us to a place. I wanted to join a gym, so I went to Planet Fitness, great facility. And I'm sitting there on the exercise bike. And what was fascinating to me was there's a row of about 6 giant TVs. And on the left TV, not ironically, is CNN. And on the right TV is Fox. And the other channels in the middle, from CBS to this to that, the other thing, were the rest of the spectrum. On more than one occasion, I could glimpse the right side of the television window and the left side of the television window talking about the same story, about something that happened, except the version of what happened, the version of reality over here was very different than the version of reality over here. So it gets you thinking, is reality even something that exists? Is there anything that's true? Or is it all made up? Is it all projected? I don't know. It's an interesting question. I don't know if it's an answerable question. In fact, I would even go so far to say it's probably not. So maybe we should talk about, who cares? Like, why does it matter if that's the right one or that's the right one? Truly, who cares? Why is it important? Why don't we just all choose our own truth and happily ever after coexist? Well, it really hasn't worked that way. And if we think about it, it all comes down to how the truth has been applied. How has it been used? What is the truth for? Right? Well, it seems to me that for much of history, and the present time included, truth is really used, has been used to characterize things that are going on that are right or wrong, good or bad, good and evil even. The right way, the wrong way. Things are how they should be. Things are how they shouldn't be, right? Do you find yourself ever going through the day and consciously or unconsciously passing little judgments? Oh, well, that's the way it should be. People shouldn't do that. Well, that's the way, see, that's the way things should be. See, if more people did that, right? Well, that's an application of the truth used to determine if things are or are not the way they should, to determine if people are or are not doing the things that they should, right? The problem, of course, is that creates a lot of tension. Also creates a lot of angst, right? If you are looking at the polarization of the world, certainly the United States in the political sphere, well, if you have an idea we should all be thinking the same, right? The truth is we're supposed to be all pointing in the same direction. Well, this is a problem to fix. It's going to cause stress, right? And there's only one thing to do. Well, we need those people over here or those people over here. We're only looking for those two possibilities. So in a traditional application of the truth, we try to find what other people need to do or what we need to do to be doing things the right way. Sounds exhausting. Furthermore, with 8 billion people on this planet, what are the chances we're going to get there, right? So what I find in good morning, Steve. What I find more often than not is the truth is used as a weapon. It's used for how we relate to others, sometimes for ourselves, but usually we're pretty quick to say, oh, I know the truth, I'm going to get in line with it, and now we're done. Now it's all about who else ain't doing it, who else doesn't get it. So the truth does not become a personal tool for growth or expansion or creation or power or possibility. It becomes a tool to judge others and try to move them to some place that they need to be to get the world right. Again, that's one way to play the game. I'm not saying stop doing that. It is kind of exhausting. And you got to wake up every day and catalog and then confront all the people who aren't doing things the way that they should be doing them. But ultimately, the truth as right or wrong, good or bad, puts us in the world of judgment. It sentences us to a lifetime of judging others for doing the right things or doing the wrong things, and then deciding, is it worth my time? Is it worth my effort? Do I have enough energy to do something about it, right? How many wars have been fought in the name of truth? How many have been killed? How many have been murdered? All in the name of truth. And whoever's doing the murdering, well, they're not thinking they're murdering. They're thinking they're doing what is righteous and good because their truth differs. So I really do think this idea that there is a truth that we all need to agree on, well, it's a nice idea. It seems almost quaint in 2023 with 8 billion people on the planet. The idea that we're going to somehow get to a singular truth, well, that's a very interesting idea. More importantly, it creates more and more of this factionalization. It creates more and more of this polarization effect. And within these polarized entities, well, what we have are hierarchies and power grabs and people that use the truth and the collective desire for truth to be universal and other people to follow our truth. They use it to accrue power to themselves. Well, I'm going to share something with you about how I view the truth. And it's not the right way to do the truth. It's not the wrong way. It is an approach to the truth that, for me, creates lots of peace and freedom and connectedness, right? That's what this movement is all about. It's not about getting people to see our way of seeing it. It's about, at an individual level, how much peace can I experience? How much freedom can I experience? And how much connection can I experience? So that's the spirit with which I'm sharing how I think about the truth. So the first thing I'll say about the truth, as I consider it, is the utility of making truth a universal standard that everyone needs to adhere to is very low. What has high utility for me is in choosing personal truths that I can use to learn, that I can use to grow, that I can use to expand. Let me unpack this a little bit, and I'll try to do this slowly in a way that makes sense, because to me it's very simple. You see, I think about truth like a standard, an agreed upon standard that I use to measure, assess, and then work with what's there. My favorite example of this is, I should have brought a prop, a tape measure, a ruler, right? When I open up a ruler in the United States, what I go to is the section that has inches and feet, and I know that this ruler represents the standard for what an inch is, the standard for what a foot is. It represents the truth. Now, what I don't do is I don't take the ruler and go around arguing with people, trying to tell them I've got a better way of measuring things, telling them they need to adhere to my standard. What I do is I use the standard of a ruler to measure things to see if they fit, to see how much wood I need to build a table. And inherent in the application of a standard is the idea that other standards exist. So by design, and in fact, most rulers in the United States have another side which contains centimeters. So I can convert inches to centimeters for the purpose of interacting with places in the world that have a different standard, the metric system or the imperial system. So that's how I think about the truth in the most simplistic sense. It's a standard that I can use to measure what is occurring in my life, where I'm at, where I want to be, what I'm going to do to get there. And there's nothing inherently incompatible about my standard with other standards. I might need to come up with a conversion factor, but I can do that, right? So what things do I create as truth? Well, the first principle is the idea of a standard. The second is I look for standards that I can create as truth that will allow me to learn more about myself, about the world, and how I relate to the world. Excuse me. So let's take something as an example. I hold as the truth, nothing inside of me is created outside of me. Nothing anybody does outside of me can produce an experience of life inside of me. Nobody can make me angry. Nobody can make me sad. Nobody can make me happy. Now, let's look at that for a second. That is something I hold as truth. And the true is true always, but only for me. Somebody else is free to choose a different truth, and they'll do what they want with it. But here's the utility of that truth for me. If I know, if I believe, if the standard, if the ruler says anything I'm feeling is being produced in here, well, then I'm going to go in here to look for it and work with it. I'm not going to try to do something outside of me. When I'm in traffic and somebody cuts me off and I feel myself get angry, and my brain is telling me that I'm angry because that guy cut me off, and who's he to do that? And doesn't he know that he could kill somebody? Well, in that moment, I'm imprisoned. I am stuck in the emotion of anxiety and frustration. And I need to work through it and process it. I may need to chase that guy down and give him what for. Well, if instead I hold up the standard, right, of nothing happens inside of me that's created from something outside of me, well, then I can ask a different question. What am I missing? How am I creating that? Where haven't I looked for it, right? Another simple example. If you can't find your keys and they're lost, you got a problem. If your keys are in the house somewhere, but you just haven't located them yet, well, that gives you a very prescriptive set of activities that you can set about doing to go find your keys. So depending on the truth you choose, the actions you take and where you will apply your energy will be guided by that, right? If I've lost my keys, well, I can walk out my door and start looking for them everywhere, and that's going to take a long time. If my keys are somewhere in this house, I put them down someplace, I just forgot where they are, well, I'm going to set about a much more manageable set of activities with a much less consumption of energy to find those keys. So the idea of truth is a standard, right? Let's go back to the ruler. What's the purpose of a ruler? Somebody says this thing is 5 feet long. Somebody else says, yeah, no, I think it's 4 feet. Well, what's useful is to get out a ruler and determine what it is. So then we'll see if it fits in my house. Will it go through the doorway? I'm not getting out the ruler so we can argue about the size of the table. I'm doing it so I can produce something useful. So what I'm not going to do is share with you all of my truths and try to get you to see that my truths are the right truths to choose. What I am going to do is encourage you to start asking yourself, what do I consider true? And why is that important that it is true? And what do I use that truth for? I'll use a very simple one that hopefully won't come across as confrontational. Many people on this planet believe some version of this is who God is, this is what God wants me to do, and this is what happens if I do the things that God wants me to do, and this is what happens if I don't. Now, we've gone on holy crusades to kill massive populations of people to prove that that's the case, to convert people. That's one way to use the truth. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying we've used it that way. I would suggest a more peaceful, freeing, and connected way to use the truth about God is If God is something you believe in, if you hold as truth there is God, you can start to look at all the places where you question that. You can see places in your life where you're certain God isn't there, but the truth, the standard, the ruler is God is there. God has my back. God loves me, however you want to play it. And use that to dissolve the illusion of untruth, of falsehood, right? If life occurs exactly the way it's supposed to, as a truth, then all the places I think this shouldn't be happening, I can hold against the truth. No, this is supposed to be happening. I just don't know why yet. And in that holding of that truth, the standard, begin to look for and eventually discover how this is perfect. That's a little bigger one to swallow and probably worth more conversation. I'll close us out by using an analogy and sharing something that I think is a beautiful representation of the truth as I see it, the way of using truth as a standard. In the 2010 movie Inception, which was both written and directed by the brilliant Christopher Nolan, Leonardo DiCaprio and Elliot Page, two of the main characters, are engaged in this thing where they go into the memories, they go into sleep, and they're kind of doing this dream espionage. Well, one of the things that is critical to these dream explorers, these dream agents, is that they know if they are in fact in a dream or awake, if they are in their dream or somehow in somebody else's dream. So they've established something called a totem, and it's different for everyone. Leonardo's is this little spinning top, and Elliot Page's is a little rook or some chess piece that falls a certain way. And the idea is Leonardo spins the top, and if the top topples over, well, he knows he's awake. He knows that this is real. If it keeps spinning, well, that's not how they actually behave. And it's really important to keep the truth, keep the totem secret. Hopefully you see where I'm going here. This idea of truth is something I need to put out in the world and get everybody else to agree on is actually counterproductive in the world of playing the game called truth as a standard I use to learn. I use to expand my own consciousness. I use to increase my level of peace, freedom, and connection. My truths are private. I keep them to myself so that I can learn from them without anybody else influencing what I'm seeing about myself. The last scene of the movie is actually ending with the top spinning, and we don't know if the top's going to topple, indicating he is in reality, or the top keeps spinning, indicating he's actually been in a dream the whole movie. What is your totem? What are your truths? What are the truths you can use to create more of what you want in the world, rather than using those truths as a bludgeon, as a cudgel to get the rest of the world to submit? Again, you can play the game you want. The game we're playing here is peace, freedom, and connection. I think shifting how you create the truth, what you use it for, what its intention is, how it's deployed as a tool, has the capacity to give you lots and lots of that. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for a little bit. Have an amazing rest of your day. Much love.